Control does not arrive wearing the uniform people expect. It does not usually appear as dictatorship, chains, or overt oppression. The most effective control system is one that convinces its population that it does not exist. When control is visible, it can be resisted. When it is hidden inside culture, belief, routine, and perception, it becomes almost impossible to confront. Humanity has been trained to associate control with obvious force, which allows subtler forms of domination to operate freely, unnoticed, and unchallenged. The question is not whether humanity is controlled, but whether people recognize control when it no longer looks like control at all. Modern control works by shaping perception rather than behavior. People are not told what to do directly. They are taught what is normal, reasonable, and possible. Once these boundaries are accepted internally, behavior regulates itself. This is far more efficient than force. A population that polices its own thoughts, emotions, and expectations does not need to be ruled aggressively. It rules itself. People believe they are free because they can choose, unaware that the range of available choices has been carefully engineered. One of the most powerful illusions is the belief that freedom exists because options exist. But choosing between limited options inside a controlled framework is not freedom. It is management. True freedom would involve questioning the framework itself. That level of questioning is quietly discouraged, not through violence, but through ridicule, distraction, and social pressure. Those who attempt to look beyond surface reality are labeled paranoid, extreme, or unbalanced. The message is clear: think freely, but not that freely. According to the long-standing research and worldview of David Icke, control is maintained by keeping humanity focused on effects rather than causes. People argue endlessly about politics, economics, culture, and ideology while ignoring the deeper structure that produces them all. Division is not a failure of the system. It is one of its primary tools. A divided population never unites to question the source of division itself. Control also depends on familiarity. What people grow up with feels normal, even if it is deeply restrictive. Surveillance becomes safety. Obedience becomes responsibility. Fear becomes realism. Over time, the abnormal becomes routine, and routine becomes invisible. People do not feel controlled because they have adapted. Adaptation is mistaken for acceptance, and acceptance is mistaken for choice. The most dangerous aspect of this system is denial. Many people reject the idea of hidden control, not because they have examined it and found it false, but because accepting it would destabilize their understanding of reality. It is psychologically safer to believe that power is chaotic, accidental, or merely incompetent than to consider that it might be deliberate, ancient, and highly organized. Denial becomes self-protection. This chapter establishes a critical foundation. If control is hidden within perception, then exposing it requires more than political change or social reform. It requires awareness. Awareness does not fight the system, it sees it. And once something is clearly seen, it can no longer operate in the same way. Control survives not because it is strong, but because it is unseen. The moment people stop asking what they are allowed to choose and start asking who designed the choices, the illusion begins to fracture. This book begins there, not with fear, but with recognition. Throughout history, power has always appeared to sit on thrones, behind podiums, or within institutions, yet those who occupy these positions rarely hold true authority. They are visible managers, not ultimate controllers. Kings fall, presidents change, governments collapse, yet the same structures of dominance, hierarchy, and exploitation remain intact. This continuity raises a question that most people instinctively avoid. If rulers change, but control does not, then power must exist somewhere deeper than the individuals we see. Real control does not need public recognition. It operates most effectively from the shadows. Ancient civilizations spoke openly about non-human gods, watchers, archons, and entities that guided or ruled humanity. These were not abstract spiritual metaphors in their original context. They were described as real intelligences interacting with the physical world. Over time, these accounts were mythologized, dismissed, or reinterpreted to make them psychologically safe. Yet the patterns never disappeared. Instead, they went underground. The same ruling bloodlines, symbols, rituals, and hierarchies resurface again and again, adapting to cultural expectations while preserving the same power dynamics. According to the long-standing research and worldview of David Icke, humanity is not merely governed by corrupt humans, but influenced by non-human consciousness operating through human structures. These forces do not rule openly. They work through possession, bloodline inheritance, psychological manipulation, and vibrational control. This explains why extreme cruelty, lack of empathy, and predatory behavior appear consistently at the highest levels of power, regardless of culture or era. The system rewards those who resonate with its nature. The idea of hidden forces is rejected not because it lacks historical precedent, but because it challenges the deepest assumptions about reality. Accepting that control may come from beyond visible human systems destabilizes materialist thinking. It forces people to consider that consciousness, not matter, may be the primary battleground. This is precisely why the topic is ridiculed so aggressively. Ridicule is cheaper than investigation and far more effective at discouraging inquiry. These hidden forces do not require mass belief to function. They require human denial. As long as people insist that only what they can see exists, control remains untouched. The system does not need secrecy when disbelief does the work for it. This is why exposure often fails, not because it is wrong, but because it is too destabilizing to accept people defend the illusion instinctively, even when it works against them. The throne then is symbolic. Behind every visible ruler is a deeper intelligence shaping decisions, feeding on fear, division, and low emotional states. Humans fight each other over ideology, race, religion, and politics, never realizing that these conflicts are symptoms, not causes. While attention remains focused on surface battles, the real controllers remain invisible. This chapter introduces a disturbing realization. Humanity has been encouraged to believe that power is clumsy, accidental, and incompetent. In truth, it may be ancient, highly intelligent, and deeply patient. Control has survived every civilization because it does not depend on them. It simply uses them. Once this possibility is acknowledged, history looks different, politics looks different, human behavior looks different. And the question is no longer who rules the world, but what does. What most people call reality is not reality itself, but a narrow interpretation of it. Human perception operates within an extremely limited range of frequency, filtering an infinite field of information into something the brain can process. Sight, sound, and even thought are confined to this narrow bandwidth, creating a shared illusion that feels solid, objective, and unquestionable. This limitation is not a flaw of nature, it is the foundation of control. A species that cannot perceive beyond a restricted frequency range can be guided, manipulated, and contained without realizing it is imprisoned at all. This frequency prison does not require physical walls. It operates through perception. Humans experience only what their senses and belief systems allow them to register. Anything beyond that range is dismissed as impossible, imaginary, or insane. This is how control enforces itself without force. If something cannot be perceived, it cannot be questioned. If it cannot be questioned, it cannot be resisted. The prison works not by blocking reality, but by narrowing awareness so completely that the wider reality never enters consideration. Fear plays a critical role in maintaining this confinement. Fear lowers frequency. Trauma, anxiety, stress, and constant emotional stimulation lock consciousness into survival mode, where perception becomes rigid and reactive. In this state, intuition fades and awareness contracts. A fearful mind does not explore, it clings. This is why fear is endlessly manufactured and recycled. It is not just an emotional response, it is a control mechanism. The more fearful the population, the smaller the perceptual range. According to the long-standing research and worldview of David Icke, non-human controlling forces operate beyond the visible spectrum, interacting with humanity through frequencies humans cannot normally perceive. These forces do not need to dominate physically. They influence vibrational states. By keeping humanity trapped in low-frequency emotions, fear, anger, guilt, shame, they remain invisible while exerting influence. Humans mistake their own reactions for free will, unaware that their emotional environment is being deliberately engineered. This frequency-based control explains why so many people feel disconnected, exhausted, and trapped, despite material comfort. They sense limitation without seeing the bars. Modern life is structured to keep consciousness externally focused and internally fragmented. Constant noise replaces stillness. Distraction replaces reflection. Information replaces understanding. A mind that never becomes still never expands its perceptual range. Stillness is dangerous to control because it allows awareness to rise beyond programmed limits. Belief systems act as frequency locks. What people believe determines what they are capable of perceiving. If something falls outside belief, it is filtered out before awareness can register it. This is why deeply entrenched belief systems are so fiercely defended. They are not just ideas, they are perceptual boundaries. To question belief is to risk seeing beyond the prison. For many, that risk feels more frightening than confinement. This chapter reveals a disturbing truth. Humanity is not controlled primarily through laws, weapons, or surveillance, but through perceptual limitation. The prison is not external, it is experiential. People do not need to be forced to stay inside it. They are taught that nothing exists outside it. Once this is understood, freedom takes on a different meaning. Freedom is not escape from a system, but expansion of perception beyond it. The frequency prison collapses not when walls are broken, but when awareness outgrows them. And that is precisely what the hidden forces work hardest to prevent. Fear is not an accidental byproduct of human existence. It is the primary energy source of the control system. Everything else, wars, division, crises, propaganda, surveillance, and authority, exists to generate, amplify, and recycle fear. Fear contracts awareness, lowers perception, and locks consciousness into survival mode. A fearful population does not explore reality, it reacts to it. Reaction is predictable. Predictability is control. This is why fear is constant, not occasional. If fear ever truly subsided, the system would lose its grip. Fear works because it feels justified. There are always reasons to be afraid: threats, enemies, disasters, uncertainty. But the issue is not whether fear exists, it is how fear is used. Fear is continuously triggered, refreshed, and redirected so that humanity never fully exits survival mode. When people are afraid, they seek authority. They surrender autonomy in exchange for reassurance. They stop questioning deeper structures and focus on immediate relief. Control does not need to dominate a population that is begging to be managed. This emotional harvesting is ancient. Long before modern technology, fear was generated through gods, demons, punishment, exile, and eternal damnation. Today, the imagery has changed, but the function remains identical. Fear of loss, fear of exclusion, fear of instability, fear of being wrong, fear of being different. These are not random emotional states. They are cultivated environments. A population that lives in fear becomes emotionally dependent on the very system that creates it. According to the long-standing research and worldview of David Icke, hidden controlling forces feed on low-frequency emotional energy, with fear being the most potent. Fear creates a vibrational state that allows these forces to remain dominant while staying largely invisible. This is why fear-based narratives are always prioritized, amplified, and protected. Calm, clarity, and expanded awareness weaken the system because they raise frequency and restore perception. Fear also divides. A fearful population turns on itself. People project anxiety outward, blaming groups, ideologies, or identities. This horizontal conflict prevents vertical awareness. While humans fight each other, they never look upward at the source manipulating the environment. Division is not a failure of humanity. It is the intended outcome of fear-based control. Unity would end the system overnight. What makes fear so effective is that it feels personal. People believe they are afraid because of their own circumstances, not realizing that the emotional climate itself is engineered. News, media, politics, and digital platforms are designed to keep fear cycling constantly. Just as one threat fades, another emerges. Resolution is never the goal. Sustained emotional agitation is. This chapter reveals a disturbing realization. Fear is not something humanity occasionally experiences. It is something humanity is immersed in. Like water to a fish, it becomes invisible through familiarity. People no longer ask why they are anxious. They assume anxiety is normal. This normalization is the system's greatest success. Freedom cannot exist in a fearful mind. Awareness cannot expand while fear dominates perception. This is why fear must be continuous, justified, and socially reinforced. The system does not need to control every thought. It only needs to keep emotional frequency low enough that deeper questioning never stabilizes. Once fear is recognized as fuel rather than truth, its power weakens. And that recognition is dangerous, because a population that stops feeding the system emotionally cannot be controlled in the same way. Fear is not the consequence of control. Fear is the control. The moment someone begins to see beyond the surface of reality, the system moves quickly to discredit them, not by addressing what they are saying, but by attacking who they are perceived to be. Ridicule is the first and most effective weapon used against awareness, because it shuts down inquiry without requiring debate. An idea that is mocked does not need to be examined. Once awareness is labeled crazy, paranoid, or dangerous, most people instinctively distance themselves from it, not because they have analyzed it, but because social rejection feels threatening. Ridicule protects the illusion far more efficiently than censorship ever could. This response is deeply psychological. Humans are social beings, wired to seek belonging and avoid exclusion. When questioning reality carries the risk of being laughed at, isolated, or dismissed, most people choose comfort over curiosity. The system understands this instinct perfectly. It does not need to silence every voice. It only needs to make an example of a few. The rest will self-regulate. Self-censorship becomes the norm, and silence is mistaken for consensus. Throughout history, those who challenged dominant perceptions were not disproven, they were discredited. Their character was attacked, their motives questioned, their sanity undermined. This pattern repeats endlessly because it works. Ridicule delays awareness until it no longer threatens power. By the time ideas are taken seriously, the structures they warned about are already in place. Late awareness is tolerated. Early awareness is dangerous. According to the long-standing research and worldview of David Icke, ridicule is not random social behavior. It is a strategic defense mechanism of the control system. When people are trained to fear being wrong more than being controlled, the system no longer needs to hide. People defend the illusion themselves. They attack those who challenge it, believing they are protecting truth, when in reality they are protecting psychological stability. What makes ridicule so powerful is that it reframes the conversation. Instead of asking whether an idea is true, people ask whether it is socially acceptable. Truth becomes secondary to approval. This shift ensures that awareness never reaches critical mass early enough to change direction. Those who sense something is wrong learn to suppress intuition in favor of conformity. Over time, intuition weakens. External validation replaces inner knowing. Ridicule also fragments potential unity. Those who awaken early are isolated, scattered, and discouraged from connecting. The system benefits enormously from this fragmentation. A single voice can be mocked. A unified awareness cannot. This is why division is aggressively maintained, even among those questioning reality. Labels are introduced, hierarchies form, arguments erupt. The deeper insight is lost beneath infighting. This chapter exposes a harsh truth. The system does not fear information, it fears recognition. Information can be buried, denied, or debated. Recognition bypasses argument entirely. Once something is seen clearly, no authority can unsee it for you. Ridicule is deployed to prevent that moment from happening collectively. The final realization is unsettling. Most people who mock awareness are not malicious. They are afraid of being wrong, afraid of standing alone, afraid of what awareness would require them to change. Ridicule is often a defense against internal discomfort, not an expression of confidence. Those who see early are not attacked because they are weak, but because they are dangerous. Not dangerous to people, dangerous to illusions. And illusions are the foundation upon which control is built. The hidden control system does not collapse through revolution, violence, or confrontation, because those reactions still operate within the emotional and perceptual framework the system created. Anger feeds it. Fear sustains it. Opposition gives it shape. What truly threatens control is awareness, quiet, steady, and uncompromising. Awareness does not fight the system. It sees it, and once something is clearly seen, it cannot operate in the same way. Illusions depend entirely on being believed. When belief withdraws, they dissolve. Awareness works differently from knowledge. Knowledge can be argued with, discredited, or buried. Awareness bypasses debate. It is experiential, not intellectual. A person who becomes aware no longer reacts automatically to fear-based narratives, authority cues, or emotional manipulation. They begin to observe instead of absorb. This shift is subtle but profound. The system loses leverage when people stop responding predictably. Control depends on reaction. Awareness replaces reaction with choice. According to the long-standing research and worldview of David Icke, the hidden forces behind global control do not fear humanity waking up all at once. They fear individuals waking up quietly. A mass awakening would provoke panic and resistance. Individual awareness spreads silently, without leaders, slogans, or movements. It does not announce itself. It cannot be targeted easily. It does not require permission or validation. It simply changes how people engage with reality. As awareness grows, fear loses its grip. Not because danger disappears, but because fear is recognized as manipulation rather than truth. When fear is observed rather than obeyed, it weakens. When people stop emotionally feeding fear-based narratives, those narratives lose power. The system can still broadcast fear, but it cannot force it to be absorbed. Emotional sovereignty becomes the foundation of real freedom. Awareness also dissolves division. Labels lose meaning when seen as tools of control rather than identity. Race, politics, religion, and ideology no longer define perception. They become lenses that can be examined rather than inhabited. This does not create uniformity, it creates clarity. A clear population cannot be divided against itself so easily. Division requires unconscious identification. Awareness breaks identification. The system attempts to suppress awareness through distraction, ridicule, and exhaustion, but these methods have limits. Distraction works only while attention is externalized. Ridicule works only while social approval matters more than truth. Exhaustion works only while people remain emotionally invested in narratives that drain them. Awareness steps outside all three. It does not require energy, it conserves it. This final chapter reveals the most uncomfortable truth of all. The system is not as powerful as it appears. It survives not because it is unstoppable, but because it is unquestioned. Humanity was not enslaved by superior force, but by manipulated perception, and perception can change. Awareness does not promise a perfect world. It does not remove challenge or complexity. What it removes is unconscious participation. The system cannot control what it cannot predict. And it cannot predict a population that no longer reacts automatically. Control does not end with a dramatic event. It ends quietly, gradually, and individually each time someone sees through fear, questions authority internally, and refuses to surrender perception. The hidden forces rely on humanity never realizing one simple truth. They only exist as long as they are believed, and belief, once withdrawn, does not return.